Hi, Tim here with Eugenie Bondurant, an actress from New Orleans, Louisiana. Eugenie appeared in Hunger Games, Mockingjay Part 2, Fear of Rain, and recently popular horror film, The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It. She starred in the short film Tiny Bacteria, directed by Victoria Jorgensen, which was shown at the 2017 Cannes Film Festival. She's now the head honcho at Station 12 Studio and was scouted to model for Balenciaga for their summer 2022 and fall 22 campaigns. How are you doing today, Eugenie?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking me to be on the show
Hey,
just now.
thanks for being here. I'd love to kick things off with a little bit about your background.
Oh, sure. I was raised in New Orleans, and my background, I graduated in finance, but ended up going into acting and teaching acting shortly after that. I actually started modeling a few years after graduating from college in Europe and in New York, and then that segued into acting. And then now modeling's back in the picture. So there you are. It's great. It's been
Wow.
fun. Yeah.
Hey, stay busy.
I've been staying busy. This has been a busy, very busy, crazy year. And then with my acting group, my acting ensemble, I mean, it's been terrific. All my acting students have been doing well. They've been booking, and I'm just thrilled about that. So
Well, you're
that's
working in an industry that is particularly tough to break into. So I'm excited to learn what your top three principles to drive success.
what am I taught? Be honest with yourself and with others, especially for actors. It is a tough business. It's tough on the performer. It's tough to break in. If you don't hear back from anyone, if you don't get feedback, which is something that happens 99% of the time, it doesn't mean that you did a bad job. It just means that you weren't right for the role. The right person will book the role. And sometimes my belief is sometimes you'll book things that might surprise you that you booked, and other people don't book them. So the bookings will happen. You just have to be tenacious. That's the third principle. So
Wait,
be
did I
honest
miss
with
one? Say
yourself.
honest. The third one's tenacious. And then the second one?
And so the second one is don't beat yourself up if you don't get immediate results. Keep on going. So tenacious is a piggyback to number two, but being tenacious. And I think that's important for any business you're in. Being tenacious, if it's something for which you have a passion, keep on striving toward it, whether it's a business or a hobby or whatever. I mean, if you don't know how to play a musical instrument and you sit down and play it, you're going to be frustrated for the first X amount of months as you try it. But if you give it up, well, then you give it up. But if you're tenacious and you keep trying and you keep practicing, you'll eventually get someplace. So it's the same thing with acting and teaching acting and, being in this business.
That's where it gets fun. We're going to take these three principles apart and turn them into some practical how-tos.
All right.
So let's
Let's do
the first one, honest. And I think you had a good example of keeping that sort of mindset or the genuine position when you're in those situations and not letting yourself get away from yourself, basically.
Right, right. Being honest with yourself in acting means maybe your headshots aren't exactly what is needed in the business. Maybe they're not appropriate for particular roles that you think you should be auditioning. So if that's the case, then be honest with yourself. You need to get new headshots, or you need to get shots that will be reflective of what the essence of who you are, what that is. So for example, within the past, 6 or 7 years, I've been playing roles that are the odd, eccentric antagonist versus protagonist roles. And I've always thought of myself as a pretty nice person. And I really help my actors and I go overboard for them and I love them. And outside of my work, I'm nice. I really am. But I don't always play nice characters. That's the example. I might think of myself as that, but being honest with myself means I'm never going to play, well, never say never, but it's doubtful that I would play or in the past, that I would play the girl next door, the loving mother, the doting wife, that kind of stuff. I play the doting wife that puts cyanide in the cookies or something. You know what I mean? So that's being honest with yourself. And I have to be honest with my actors as well. Not in a mean way or in a cruel way, but if I'm not honest, why are they paying me? You know what I mean?
Right.
So I have a knack for really, even though I might code it and be nice, but I've got to be honest. And if I'm not, then there's an issue. So you've got to be honest with yourself. You've got to be honest with others.
It sounds like there's a component of being conscious or self-aware that goes along with that.
Yes.
I'm wondering how, because you see it, and I think it's easier as a third person to see in others when that's lacking. In terms of how can you sort of get in that conscious or proactive state where you might otherwise not be, to start challenging yourself to say, hey, let me do this self evaluation and be conscious about where my strengths are, weaknesses, and so forth, who identify myself with who I am.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That is true. And it's not always easy to do that. I know for myself, it's been not always easy. I remember at one stage in my career, when I was living in Los Angeles, I thought, oh no, I'm going to, submit to these casting directors who they book soap operas and they book these sitcoms and blah, blah, blah. I was booked for sitcoms, but again, it wasn't the role that I thought that I would be booked, which I would be booked. I would never. First of all, know your type. And that's another way of being honest with yourself. So my type is not that. I'm 6'1", I'm angular, I'm thin. And that doesn't bode well for soap operas that usually cast females that are on average 5'2" to 5'5". Does that make sense?
Yes.
Because their leading men are 5'6" to 5'10", perhaps. Now at 6'1", I'm the giant in the room. Okay. So that's what I mean. I have one of my actors who gives off the essence of being brooding and just pensive and always in her head. And she's not. She's a very good actor and she's quite funny. Okay. But when she plays a role, you would not see her because of the essence that she exudes. You're not going to see her playing the loving mother. You're going to see her play the woman who's down on her luck. You're going to see her play the angry one. You're going to see her play the brooding, something's wrong kind of character. You know what I mean? It's not going to be the cheery, lovey, come here and let me bake some cookies kind of role. And it's just because of the essence of that's being honest, essence of who she is. And she knows it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it
So
does.
you've got to be honest with yourself. And sometimes it's hard to figure that out when you're an actor. But in this business, a lot of times they call it know what your brand is. Sometimes don't like to use that word because I feel like in some way we want to know what our lane is, like what's in our lane. But in other areas, I ask my actors to branch out and to see maybe there are some other areas that you don't know about. So if we banded ourselves as one type, well, then are we only in one lane? So I'm actually contradicting what I just said, right? But it's a way to expand your talent and your
Is,
knowledge base. So
is there a way to validate your view where you may have some assumptions on what that profile or brand is, but is there a way to get another perspective? Or I'm just trying to think of somebody, especially maybe an actor that's real early in their career and they're still trying to figure that out. And sometimes you get that little closed loop circle in your own head.
oh, yeah, of course. Well, that's what an acting coach does. One of the things that I suggest with my actors is find your tribe, find your group, find people that you trust. And the main thing that I did, one of the most helpful things when I lived in Los Angeles was to find my group. And we all supported each other. And we'd meet once a week and we'd talk about, well, what did you submit? What did you do? What auditions did you do? Why didn't that work? And then we dive into, well, why didn't I get a call back? Well, why did I audition for this role instead of this role? And it helps to expand that awareness. So find your group and that group will really encourage you because being an actor, it's tough business and you have to have a passion for it because otherwise there's so many highs and lows. There are ups and downs in this business. Another thing too, we have to realize as a performer, and maybe this is the case in other areas of business, I don't know. But as a performer, not only the highs and the lows also consist of where you are and your type. Maybe your type is popular at the moment and maybe it's not. I work with some 16-year-old young women who are actors who are looking to get into film and TV. It's a generalization, but generally they look older than 16. Okay. It's rare that you'll get a 16-year-old that looks 14. It would be great if they did because they're a 16-year-old that can play 14 and they can work a little bit longer hours on set, right? But if that 16-year-old is more mature, then what's going to end up happening? She's in a low point right, of her potential career, right? And there are not going to be very many auditions for that 16-year-old that reads 18 because production would rather hire an 18-year-old to play a 16-year-old because they can work overtime. They don't have to have a teacher on set. They're treated like an adult because they are an adult and they're more mature potentially. That is a low trough. So what do you do? This is just an example. What do you do when you're 16 and you read 18, you look more mature? Well, you look at other areas of the business and look at exploring and getting knowledge in other areas of the business, like maybe voiceovers, maybe stage combat, maybe Shakespeare. I don't know. But if you explore other areas, by the time you get out of that trough, you've got all this wonderful experience that now is on your resume that will help you as you climb back up. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's a good example of, again, identifying and kind of finding your path. The ups and downs was another key piece that you mentioned right before that, which I think that lends to the second principle about don't beat yourself up. Some people tend to have a nature of really beating themselves up. I think today I forgot something at home and I was beating myself up for where's my mind going these days? And with that too, where you get excited, we get them, we get the big pitch opportunity, and you don't always win them. You want to, and sometimes you put a lot of effort in, and you didn't get it. Yeah, I'm curious on your views on how do you not beat yourself up?
It's tough. Again, you're not 99% of the time, you're not told whether your reading was a good one or not. So you've got to build yourself up, right? So in this business, the business that I'm in, when as an actor for film and television, when you get to an audition, that's good. It's like what you had just mentioned. When you get to propose something to a prospective client, that's a win. And we have to look at that as a solid win because what ends up happening, and maybe same thing with the business that you're in, for one role, and it could be a teeny role, casting directors have anywhere from 500 to 1,000 submissions for one role. And they've got to look quickly and pick the talent that they want to read, which means maybe they might have from 500 to 1,000 people, they may have 20 people read. So that's huge, just being able to read for a role. All right. So then you go from, let's say, being in the 20, then you potentially have a callback, right? Now, if how things are, those 20 may or may not, sometimes those 20, one might get directly booked from tape. We don't know his talent is how many people the casting director is sending to production. So out of the 20, that casting director might send 5 tapes to production to view. Now, we don't know. That means out of the 5, if you're one of the 5, you essentially got a call back without realizing it. Now, all you know is that out of the 5, all you know is that you got to audition for it. And if you don't book it, that's all you know. So we have to look at that as huge. Wow, I got to audition. This is my job. This is what gets me up in the morning. This is what's exciting. Oh, this is fabulous. I get to put on different wardrobe and be in the mindset of someone else, this character that's on the page. That's exciting. That's the thrill. When you get the job, woo, it's like you. Oh my gosh. Instead of looking at it like, oh my gosh, I didn't book that job. If we look at it as in, man, I got to audition for that role. That's really cool. Particularly if there's a casting director who continues to call you in, or maybe one that for whom you've never read, and now you get to audition for him or her, that's great. It's really a big plus. There's so many actors who didn't book certain roles that other actors did that have been phenomenal, and then they went on to book other things that were phenomenal. So we've got to be incredibly optimistic in this business so that we can continue going and continue trying. Again, I'm going to go back to if someone else books the role, you might not even know who that person is. But if someone else books the role, which they would, right? Then good for them. Good, great. Man, that means I'm getting closer to
Yep.
booking my next job.
I like it. It's acknowledging the progress you're making and
Yeah.
enjoying the journey, that it's all
Yeah.
part of getting there and really
Yes.
owning it, being happy about that.
Yes. A big thing too is, and I don't know whether you do this or not, but a big thing that I suggest to my actors is do what you can to do everything you can to give a rock solid audition, send it off, and then you have to some way forget about it. You need to erase it from your mind and go look at the future, like what's next, because we don't know. As I said before, we don't know what's going to happen. I tell my actors, think of the baseball player, right? So the baseball player, if it's a pitcher, pitchers have certain routines. They do certain things in the morning and they do certain things on the mound and they hold the ball a certain way. Maybe they twirl it in their fingers a certain way. Maybe they move their head a certain way before they pitch that ball. Well, for me, that routine is I audition for something and I immediately put my clothes away. I have a self-tape room in my house. I put my clothes away. I take off my makeup. I pull my hair back. It's just like, it's either in the bottom of the laundry or in the closet put away. So I don't need to think about it, see it. I put the file that I taped, once I've sent it off to my agent, it's in a file folder on my desktop. So I don't need to see the little thing on my desktop, the little video clip on my desktop, because then that will remind me, oh, I did that audition. How's it going to go? Am I going to call back for that? Well, I book it, blah, blah, blah. Why even get it in your head? Set up a routine to say, okay, that was great. Next, and go forward.
Yeah, it's like you're staying focused on the important part, which is your talent. So you're not putting yourself in the state where you're reflecting and wondering, and moving forward and saying, hey, I'm working the next thing and continuing progressing your skills and your value you're delivering essentially.
It's true. A delightful surprise is if I'm not booked directly from the tape that I've sent, when I get direct, what are called director's notes, and I'm asked to put another take on tape. That's a surprise. Then I've got to work really hard on, oh, well, what did I wear? Oh, where's the tape on my computer? I've got to scrounge around and look for it and see what I did to make the adjustments. So working a little bit harder for that and get back into that mindset is part of that yummy process.
Your third principle, tenacity, underpins all of this.
Oh my gosh, if we're not tenacious about this. So let's look at the two actors. One actor who's just starting out, who goes to classes, who takes improvisation, who does everything he or she can to get as much knowledge and also work, get the practical experience. They submit, they go online every day. They're submitting to student films, they're submitting to independent films, anything that they see online, whether it's on Facebook, believe it or not, there are a lot of auditions, non-union auditions for films, independent films on Facebook. It's crazy, right? But there are tons of them. Any schools that have film schools, they find out where the film school is, how they're casting, et cetera, and they submit themselves. And they're looking online every single day and they're submitting. That is part of the process, right? Then you have the other actor who, male or female, says, well, I'm doing what I can, but they don't go online every day and they don't get their headshots taken and which is a big tool of this business. It's like tool number one, you have to have a headshot, period, or more than one. And they don't submit themselves and they wonder, well, wait a minute, why am I not getting booked? Why don't I have agency representation? Well, hello. Well, why don't I have a reel? Because you're not doing your homework. That is being tenacious. That is doing that. And if you can do it for the long term, I mean, I've been acting for a long time. I've been a member of the Screen Actors Guild for a very long time. And there's some years where I've hardly worked at all. I mean, I've taught, but you know what? My feet are still in the water somehow. I was in a trough. So I did other things to build my career. I did radio theater, I did voiceovers, I started singing and performing with my husband. So that's being tenacious. I went online, I joined the different platforms, I learned something new. I joined different platforms where I could submit. And I felt like if I could submit every day, then fabulous. How many submissions at the end of the week did I submit? Great. So it plays along with building yourself up, being tenacious. There are going to be times where there are low times. So we've got to figure out a way. We've got to do it on our own. Maybe ask other people, how did you do it? We've got to do this on our own. You're building your career. The career rarely happens like that. You've got to put the time in and the result will happen. It may not happen exactly on your time, but it will be evident.
I believe this is one of the biggest factors to success. I'm curious if this is something you're born with or is it something that you can develop?
I don't know. I really don't know. Like I said, I mean, you factor one, one actor versus another actor, and I think, oh,
Or
if
maybe
I'm telling the
maybe it
same
could
thing,
change over time. I don't know. I've always been curious because you try to help others, but underpinning everything is this. Like you gotta have this drive and determination and keep going
yeah,
after things and ride it through. And I don't know. I just some have it and you have read enough biographies and so forth where you
yes.
can just tell from an early age they've always had
Yeah.
it.
So I have an actor that I started working with about, I don't know, 3 years ago or so. And she has a thick European accent. And she said, I'm in this business. I'm going to work. I'm going to work. I'm thinking, oh no. The industry has changed so that people with accents actually are now booked. Whereas 5 years ago, 10 years ago, you had to have a non-regional dialect to work. But now, thank goodness that business is wide up. Do you know that girl? Now, this was about 3 years ago where the industry was just changing. And I thought, oh, here she is. She's in Florida. I don't know. But I didn't want to discourage her because I thought, who am I to say, no, you're never going to work again? I mean, I can't say that because fortunately that didn't happen to me. I don't want to say that. I'm not that type of person and I can't, but I thought, oh man, that girl ended up, she was so tenacious. She was online every day, submitting. She booked like 4 films within 6 months, small ones, but still shorts and non-union projects, but still she had done that in 6 months. They didn't care. They were excited about her accent and went, okay, that's it. That's proof. If you want it, it's out there. You can get it.
Oh, this is great. What's the best mistake you've ever made?
Not knowing what to do at an audition. It was very early on, and I just started studying acting, and I'd segued from modeling into acting. And my biggest mistake was not preparing enough for a very big audition. And I thought I was prepared fine in my mind, but I look back and it cracks me up because I think, oh, seriously? You didn't do anything. And I had been working all the day before and the day before and the day before, it's like, I didn't have much time to work on it. And I tanked, I bombed. It was big. I thought, well, they'll never call me in again. They didn't. So that was number one. And number two, the biggest mistake I did early on was not take improv. I should have taken improv classes when I first started. And that would have helped a lot.
That's good. You learned a tremendous amount that got you in the direction you are today.
Yeah. And you know what? With my classes, we do improv before we start every class. So I'm in the middle of it and I'm doing it and they're doing it too. And it's great warm up. So they're force fed.
I
Like,
agree.
you can do it regardless. Don't make my mistake. Right.
Anything you want to wrap up with? Maybe advice to others? Because I think, like I said, you're kind of in a unique spot being in the industry and one of the most tough ones to break into that you'd want to share with others that are
Yeah,
inspiring.
I do. I do. Okay. Sometimes we don't know what someone else is thinking. Well, oftentimes we don't. Right. And that's what acting is all about, communication, not communication, the conflict, right? Oftentimes, I was on a set fairly recently where the director continued to ask me to do certain things and that I thought I was doing. And the lesson that I learned from that was keep yourself open to the direction because the director always has your best interests in mind. Always keep yourself. Once I had to on set, at first I thought there was an issue with me. And then I realized, no, this is a very technical director. That director wants what is best for you and the work that is being created. So be open and receptive to what you're hearing and don't take it as a negative or criticism. Take it as a positive that you're creating something really fabulous and terrific.
That's great advice. Eugenie, thank you so much for the time and conversation today. I enjoyed it.
Thank you. I look
Um,
forward to seeing you again
oh,
one
I
day.
should, if anybody's interested in following you, keeping up with
Yes.
you, what are the best ways to do that?
So the best way to do that is on Instagram. My Instagram address is the first 3 letters of my first name and then my last name. So Eug Bondurant, Bondurant.
Great.
That's it.
Thanks again for the time.
Thank you very much.